endorsement. It's different from some of the candidate forums you go to because we're trying to reach a decision about an endorsement. We don't guarantee equal time. We'll ask follow-ups of people that we might not ask of you. With that, we'll get started. We'll ask each of you to introduce yourself, give a brief bio, and your number one priority if elected. Let's just start at this end. Well, you know, I started with you.
No problem, okay.
If that's all right, and then we'll rotate who goes first,
Okay.
somewhat randomly.
Okay. I'm Bruce Broussard. Again, I'm running for County Commissioner District Number 2, okay? And just briefly, my specific priorities for running, rationale for running, is that I happen to be a senior citizen. I'm a vet, and I'm very interested in the homeless issue aspect of it. Wapato is something that I've worked very hard on in terms of I think we need to keep it. I think we can add it to the county situation because a lot of times it's overflow. And right now what they do with the overflow is that they release them. And I think we could make better utilization, if you will, of that situation.
Mr. Broussard, can I interrupt for a second and ask you to tell us who you are and what you've done?
Oh, okay, geez, I should have brought something. Anyway, I have run for office on several different occasions, okay? I ran for, I think I ran for Wally Priestley's position back in the early days when I used to own the Portland Observer newspaper aspect of it in Northeast Portland. And afterwards, I've also built a senior citizen complex. That was some background in some of the things that I've done. I was in the housing business at one point in time. My wife and I were in the housing business. We had Tri-County neighborhood housing, where we basically carried the credit to purchase the house, and we sold it to low-income families up in Northeast Portland, which was really good during that particular time. I did attempt to purchase the Fred Meyer building, not actually attempted to purchase it. The Urban League owned it, the Fred Meyer building, and where the police department is now located on Killsworth and MLK. And the idea that I was going to make a sort of a mini mall out of that situation, which I thought was well needed there, that area. And it just so happened in the past I used to be at U.S. Bank, and I was kind of like part of the committee that put together the Saturday market during that particular time. And I thought it would be a neat idea to put a Saturday market there at that facility because they had an overhang where the police department, and because the police department was there, I thought it would have been a good idea to do that on that end of it. And in fact, I was on the committee that came up with the idea of the bricks downtown Pioneer Square, because I worked very closely with Charles Jordan on that end of it. And I thought that was a neat idea. Unfortunately, guess what? They didn't do it. And they didn't take my idea on that other end of it. I also was on the committee. In fact, I was on the board at that point in time with the Boys and Girls Club. A guy by the name of Chuck McCullough, who was the chairman. And they had planned to build the Boys and Girls Club in North Portland. And we decided to see if we could get it on MLK. And the idea about being it right next to the police department, people would be feeling comfortable about going over there.
Are you registered with any political party? Are you registered? You're unaffiliated.
No, unaffiliated. I have been, in all due respect, for a long time, a Lincoln Republican. My rationale, in all due respect, was to let the folks know about the history, if you will, of what that meant by Lincoln Republican. There's a lot of history there in reference to African Americans, because when Lincoln being the 16th president, was elected, if you will, he basically freed all the slaves and made them Americans. Everybody were Americans. And I'm always referring to the movie Glory with Denzel Washington and Morgan Freeman, and doing the Buffalo Soldier aspect of it, where basically they were issued uniforms, but they also were issued their assault weapons, and that was a no-no, if you will, during that particular time. So I've always referred to that because it talks about a lot of the history of African Americans.
Great.
I am a non-affiliated, okay?
Thank you.
Terrific. Ms. Garcia.
Yeah, good morning. I'm a local business owner. Revolucion Coffee House is the name of my business. I've been in business for 4 years. Before, I worked in the Mexican consulate in the community affairs department. That's here in Portland. When I worked in the Mexican consulate, I was in charge of promoting the programs that the Mexican government has for Mexicans living abroad. So this was housing, education, culture, cultural programs. Right there is when I started doing advocacy for incarcerated Latino men. And I've been doing that for a few years already, advocating for them directly with the Department of Corrections, right? Before, I live in California. I live in Palm Springs, and I work as an orthopedic massage therapist. I specialize on sports injury and senior care. So pretty much I work with seniors in the time. So I moved to Portland 9 years ago. I work in the Mexican consulate. Then I decided to open my own business, which is Revolucion now. And then because of my connection with the Latino club in Oregon State Penitentiary, I started doing the advocacy. And then I became president of Don't Shoot Portland, which is a social justice organization. And well, now I'm the former president of it. But my advocacy continues in working or participating in Don't Shoot Portland. It has been a really good experience because working on social justice, not just knowing the needs of the Latino community, but the African American community and other minority communities, it has really created an impact in my life in general. So through my business, I've been able to open the doors to different activist groups that are focused into social justice. They come and organize. I have organized a social justice brunch on 2017. All year long, every second Saturday, we used to get together, and the place was just open for community to come and talk about social issues and to organize. So it's how we created the connections and organized different events. I donated a percentage of the sales to Don't Shoot Portland, which I was the president of it. So we also did, I think the greatest impact that I created in Don't Shoot Portland was to be more focused into arts. So we created the Kids Arts Council. And for me, culture is a very important aspect of life, and I don't see enough culture and openness to multicultural communities here in Portland. So for me, the approach with arts and teaching the kids to express their feelings, to express how they perceive life, how they see it through art is really important. We talk about social justice in their own language and through art, and that's really important for me. Now I'm not the president of Don't Shoot Portland anymore, but I'm active with them.
Is this your first run for office?
This is the very first time, yes. And I'm also part of the Renter Screening Criteria Policy Advisory Group, and I'm the co-chair of the New Portlanders Policy Commission, and its representative for the Sanctuary City Task Force. I'm also part of the Food Equity for Healthy Latino Families project with OHSU and Familias en Acción, and that's a project that we're working on this year. So that's about my background. The platform that I'm working on is housing and homelessness. As a business owner, I get directly affected by these issues because my business is in downtown. So I remember 4 years ago, once in a while, we used to get a person with a mental issue coming to the shop or homeless, right? And it wasn't a big deal. But now I'm getting these community members coming to my shop every other day. and it's a serious problem for me. I'm working on racist and political disenfranchisement that our communities are experiencing. Not just the Latino community, but at large, all communities. We are politically disenfranchised, and that's one of the reasons why I want to run for this, because that's part of the problem. We don't understand how the system is, how the county runs, how the city runs, and that's a serious problem. That's why we have the president we have, because we don't know what's going on around us. I'm working on the issues of health and environment, justice and sanctuary city status, which is very important for our immigrant community, and education, since I think it's very important to create awareness, not just for our youth, but the parents also. Our parents have to be more involved in knowing what's going on with their kids. As an immigrant woman, I know the challenge of the language barrier that our immigrant communities have, and not being able to help our kids to do homework, right, after 5th grade or 6th grade. Then we leave our kids navigating this educational system that is complicated. And that's one of the reasons why our graduation rate is very, very low, because there's not engagement, because we don't understand. It's a language barrier, and also it's a cultural issue. Our kids tend to take care of, the oldest kids tend to take care of the younger kids, right? So our kids are not growing the way it should be. Their opportunities are not there for them.
Have you done things on education? I noticed that you got two school board members or two school board members, or 2 Portland Public School Board members endorsing?
Endorsers, Kim Sordell, yes,
Paul
Anthony, and
Okay.
Julie Brown, yes.
Okay.
So that's another topic, advocate for Latino students.
So what connection do you have with them? What kind of education issues have you worked on that you know those folks?
With the board members
Yeah.
that endorse me.
Yeah.
As an advocate, as a community advocate for Latino students, our students need lawyers, right? The parents.
Uh-huh.
And Kim Sordell has been an excellent advocate for our kids.
Uh-huh.
Our kids are suffering from racism. They're being harassed, and they don't know what to do. So all of them have been able to help me. I direct them to them, and they've been great assets to our community.
Great. Mr. Paul.
Morning, Sushila Jayapal. A little bit about myself. I was born in India, came to the US to go to college. I have lived in Portland for 24 years. I'm an attorney. My last job was running the legal department at Adidas America. And before that, I worked at law firms doing litigation in San Francisco and then here in Portland. Since leaving the law, I've been involved with nonprofit work. I've served on the boards of a number of different nonprofits, starting with Planned Parenthood, Portland Schools Foundation, which morphed into All Hands Raised, and I was on the board of that organization when we made that transition. Metropolitan Family Service, Literary Arts, Regional Arts and Culture Council. Have also seen nonprofits from the other side. I've worked with the Oregon Community Foundation in evaluating grants from nonprofits. And before I decided to run for office, I had a contract with Oregon Community Foundation managing something called the Nike Community Impact Fund, which invests in programs for children, basically youth and activity. You asked what our number one priority was, and there are obviously lots of priorities. The county has an enormous range of services and programs. My number one priority is preventing homelessness. So when we talk about homelessness, we know that it's a number of different issues, including supply of affordable housing, shelter. I think we also need to invest more in preventing homelessness in the first place. So what that can look like, it includes renter protections, and we know that that's a state issue. We've got to advocate at the state level to be able to adopt things like standards for evictions and rent stabilization, so I want to advocate for that. But I think it also means things like local housing voucher programs. I am really interested in focusing on local housing voucher programs as a way of keeping people in housing that they already have. The county is piloting a program. It's investing about $350,000 in that program right now. I would like to focus on expanding that, identifying specific groups of people that we can start with. At the moment, the county's pilot is focused on seniors. We know that of the around 4,000 people that were counted as homeless in the last point in time count, about 800 were seniors. And so that seems like a good place to focus. I think we could also focus on families with children. You know, we know the effects on kids of having to move and having housing instability. There's a school in Southeast Alder Creek that's doing this. It's identifying families that are at risk of losing their housing, partnering with Home Forward, and creating rent assistance in order to keep them stable.
Which district
Yeah.
is that?
Alder Creek is, I believe, it's not District 2, it's District
Oh,
3.
I meant which school district?
It is Portland Public Schools.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah,
know so.
yeah. And that's where the I Have a Dream program is, and so they are partnering with Home Forward, really in this very intentional, specific way to identify families at risk of losing their housing and give them, I think they're calling it rent assistance.
I haven't heard of that.
Yeah. So that's, there are other things I would like to work on, but in terms of a number one priority, I think that is keeping people in housing that they already have it's going to be more effective and less expensive in the long term than allowing people to fall out of housing and then providing emergency shelter and services once that happens. And we
So
also,
do you think this county should be spending less resources on shelters and shift the funds towards what you're talking about, vouchers?
I think revenue is absolutely one of the challenges for creating a local housing voucher program. I think we need to find new ways of financing that. So, you know, other jurisdictions are doing this. Denver is doing it. Los Angeles is doing it. One of the places they're looking is the health system and creating public-private partnerships, because health systems have recognized that you've got to have housing first. And if you don't have housing, your health outcomes are going to be much worse, and you're going to be spending more on getting those outcomes that you want. So I don't have a solution for the revenue issue, but I think we need to be more creative about finding other revenue streams. And clearly one of the challenges with a local housing voucher program is you can't just do it for 1 year. You've got to commit to it for some period of time. So it's difficult to use general fund revenues for that because you got to commit to it.
But it sounds like you're looking to a partnership with hospital.
Yeah, I think that's one option. Right, exactly.
My understanding is the pilot is in perpetuity. Like they've guaranteed those vouchers
Yes.
forever for those
Yes.
seniors. So
Yes.
that's.
But
that
here's,
could be
I mean,
an
yeah.
expensive proposition if you're expanding it.
Yes, and that's why you need to find new revenue streams. The thing, though, is that in perpetuity could also mean a couple of other things. If you can stabilize people in their housing, if you can simultaneously give them job supports, this is another thing I'd like to work on, is linking our workforce training and job support program with our housing program. If you can do those things, you have a much better chance of stabilizing them and perhaps not needing to do it in perpetuity.
Not needing the subsidy anymore.
Right, exactly.
Good. Ms. Maxwell.
Good morning. I need for you to change a paradigm here and think differently and very openly. I am Sharon Maxwell, and I'm running for District 2 County Commissioner because 20,000 people voted for me when I ran for City Council, and the same people plus have asked me to run for County Commissioner because I have a track record as a 16-year operation general contractor in a small business, which is the hub of Portland and our nation. Small businesses are the ones that fuel our economy. I recognized in 1993 when District 2, Northeast Portland, was blighted. Many people were left without jobs, income, living wage jobs to be able to provide for their families a livable and a sustainable income. My track record is very unique. I'm a trailblazer and a pioneer. I don't talk about doing things, and I want to thank Ms. J. Paul for saying some of the things that I've been saying the whole time as my platform. My priorities are based on the 3 top areas of the county's mission, which are the public mental health, which includes our housing crisis, which I have a track record when I started the House of Shalom in 2000 for the first cycle of homeless and houseless families with children, disabled, homeless people and post-incarcerated males who were excluded from the community, from the city of Portland and federal guidelines, and had nowhere to go. Secondly, public safety, which is our sheriff, our DA, and the judges. They receive over 45% of all county dollars, which is $950 million. When I had to address that through POIC, family advocacy, I was one of the advisory board members working with the families to help build and strengthen advocacy voice for our young males, brown and black males who were being incarcerated at 1,000%, having to show up there at the county to be able to say, first of all, we don't even have the money to even fight these charges. Why didn't the DA, why didn't they recognize these families are being impacted? We need to do an audit over all three of these bureaus to identify that, first of all, they've been operating out of intervention and not prevention. Thank you for saying that. Prevention is where the county's mission should be, and not crisis mode and not intervention. Public health, $50 million. There's enough money for us to address all of these issues. Family advocacy, strengthening family economically, making sure that our families are no longer dependent and codependent on services. We need to make sure that they're being able to change their trajectory and their upward mobility. For too long, District 2 has been marginalized, and with the new folks coming in, not knowing the history, they're actually benefiting from our gorgeous, beautiful Rose City, but the existing residents are being priced and pushed out. That's unacceptable to me. I didn't just wake up yesterday and feel an urgency. I've been working on this for the last 35 years. And the fact that I've given waivers to elected officials, when I asked, I went and was going to run for the school board because I did not see them addressing the systemic institutional racism and the supposed achievement gap. We know there's no real achievement gap. What we have is racism playing out that gives low expectation to children and families of color, and that keep them dependent on a system. So as county commissioner, day one, I'm already doing that. I have a working model under Mayor Sam Adams. I wrote the Summer Youth Work Program that Commissioner Smith takes credit for, and the City of Portland funds. They actually gave me grant money in 2008. I wrote that under the Bureau of Environmental Services consecutively for 3 years. They funded the program, as well as my company. I took my own profits to make sure that our young people from District 2, from North Portland all the way from St. John's out to the numbers, were being targeted and outreach to, providing them with opportunities so that they could actually make sure that the coursework that they are actually taking is going to connect them to 21st century jobs, not just going to McDonald's or Burger King, but actually being able to either have 3 ways to get to where that they can have the life that they feel that they deserve and want. And that is either job training, either the trades, or opening small businesses.
Is this your second run officially?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And is this your first?
Yes, it is.
Sorry, I skipped that question.
Yeah.
So one question I'd like to ask all 4 of you, and Ms. Maxwell, will start with you.
Sure.
Is what area of county services, single area, most needs improvement?
I would say the mental health. There's too many people that have, first of all, been traumatized. So out of my 3 areas, the number 1 is the mental health. I have talked to county employees. I have talked to many of the partners receiving contracts, and they tell me there is enough money for us actually to give people the right service delivery. I've worked on the county's compliance federal chip as an oversight advisory member for the last year, and that plan was adopted. And how to address that is communities know what they need, and so we need to make sure that that strategic plan is incorporated into the mental health piece.
I think it's the mental health system as well, and I think that the broad issue is that it actually isn't a system, that it's piecemeal. And I know that Commissioner Myron is doing a deep dive into looking at that and looking where the gaps are and the overlaps. But I think that that is the place where we've got the most gaps and where people fall through those cracks is connecting between services. Often what we're doing is giving people referrals. That doesn't really work very well. We've got to figure out a way to really more quickly and more easily connect folks to the services that we have and the service providers that we have. Another piece of that is how to address mental health services for schools. So I was out in North Portland visiting George Middle School, and the principal there had convened a meeting between school staff and staff at Home Forward, because 30% of the kids at that school come from Home Forward. The number one issue that was identified was mental health. That, again, they're giving referrals to families and to children, but for those families, it's really hard to go out and just follow up on a referral. And if we could figure out a way to put mental health providers back in schools, at least for limited time periods, that was the number one need that they identified. So I think that's something that we can really work on.
I agree, mental health system has to be improved, and I believe the gap in that we can find here is racism, deportations of our families have created depression, the diabetes and high cholesterol and heart attacks in Latino communities and African American communities has increased up to 300%. That's a problem. So when we're thinking about mental health, it's not necessarily people are crazy, right? Our communities are depressed, they're anxious. So lack of services for our communities, it is devastating the families. So our kids are not going to school, they're afraid to go to school, so they're getting depressed. We don't have enough health clinics in our schools. We need mental health workers to work not just with the kids but with the parents. So definitely we need more assistance in that area.
Good. Mr. Broussard.
Senior citizens. I think that's one area that we're going to be looking at in the future as really having really going to be in need, if you will. And all the things that you've been talking to with mental illness and veterans and things of that nature, we're going to really have some serious problems as far as that low income, as far as housing and Meals on Wheels and on, because even right now they're looking at cuts. Even though we're looking at about a $2 billion budget, everybody's going to want their fair share. But there's no one on that board that's focusing, if you will, on the senior citizen issue, because those baby boomers now is going to be quite a number more than we're going to be able to deal with, and we're going to have to really focus to make sure those seniors are able to stay in their homes for sure. That's a very, very important piece, and that they're getting a good meal, if you will, and medical attention and all.
Good.
Can I add one thing to that? I mean, you asked for one area of program services where most improvement is needed. I think the other piece is about, again, alignment. I talked about aligning job training with housing. I think all of the services the county provides would be improved if we were aligning our systems to provide services together. And it seems from what I can see, one of the issues is data sharing. So we should be able to identify a particular person who receives services and then identify all of the services that person receives and connect them. And I think right now we can't. And part of the issue is sharing of data within county departments, and part of the issue is departments that are used to working separately. So that's a broader systems issue that I think we can address.
Can I rebuttal that? Because the county actually hired someone to create a dashboard, which was Miss Amanda Lamb, that would take the data and did disseminate that, and it came up really well, and she actually presented that. So I don't believe that they can't take the data because they have already done that. It's a matter if we have the true leadership, a real champion, and our chair will make sure that each bureau is actually allowing that information to go through that dashboard, because that's what they actually hired her for, was to create the dashboard that would take all of the data from each department, and it would allow them to see where they needed to change their service delivery. So
I'm going to
May
add
I
one more
please-
rebuttal to that rebuttal, just for one quick second. That is an example of a place where they were able to access data and share it, but that was specific to the Department of Community Corrections, and I think that needs to happen throughout the county.
well, that's what I just said.
Yeah, so when we are talking about data, we are not having exact numbers. And that's a problem in the immigrant community, not just the Latino community, Asian community, you name it, immigrant communities. Because we can have up to 5, 6, 7 people living in one apartment, right? So they have different needs. But we don't know exactly how many Latinos, how many Asians, how many Africans we are having in our system because of the immigration problem. Not everybody participates in the data. Not everybody goes to the health clinics. Not everybody goes to the kids' parents' conference. So we're talking about the serious disenfranchisement from our immigrant communities in all aspects of society. So we don't have exact data, unless you are working with the community, you know the names of the people, you know the neighborhoods. But if you just base, your knowledge in programming in data, it is important, but we have to be aware that not everybody's included. And that's what I'm trying to represent. All these communities that are very silent, that are mute, right? Because the fear of deportation, the fear of retaliation. It's a very serious problem. So that doesn't include all the communities that we have here.
Maria, I would agree with that we can no longer accept the status quo and pushing an agenda that doesn't reflect the community,
Exactly.
the people who actually live in District 2.
Forgive me if I'm Rachel's going to have I'm sure a new question in a second, but I'm actually just at this point confused what we're talking about. We're talking about data. Some of the data you discussed is clearly related to incarceration rates and disparate treatment in jails. Some of it obviously is not. What is it that we're discussing right now?
Well,
Somebody mentioned data, right? So I
Right,
just wanted to
right.
add to that comment. When you're
Right.
talking about data, I'm just saying any data except for jails because they need to know. But even in the jail system, because I work in the Mexican consulate and I know that many Mexicans, okay, they're not identified by their name. They have another name, right? So we don't really know exactly who is who. So data is still wrong. It can be Juan, but his name Pedro. Because at the moment of detention, that's the ID that the person had with, right? So data is not exact.
right, and we also are addressing the lack thereof of what's been happening in District 2 that impacts the quality of life for District 2 residents, especially those that have been marginalized and left behind and priced out and pushed out. And we're saying that the data is not reflecting the services that they should be receiving from the county in District 2. That's what we're addressing here. And
What data do you mean? I'm sorry.
well, the county's data, all of the county's data from its bureaus, so DCJ, Department of Correction and Justice, from the Department of Health, all of those service deliveries that go through that, the contracts that go out from the mental health side. So myself as commissioner, I want to do an audit of the mental health, of public safety, and of public health to be able to analyze and assess and determine where those contracts are going, who's delivering them, who's actually receiving those services, and what's the return on the dollars, and is it making sense? Because a lot of money, the county's budget is $1.7 billion. That's a lot of money.
And I'm sorry, I support that because we We need audits. What is going on with the nonprofit organization world is just very disappointing. And I know because specific Latino community, nonprofit organization doesn't represent all the Latino community, right? So we have a system that is working just with the same partners all the time. In Spanish, we have a word that is called compadrazgo. It's like favoritism, right? Because you know somebody and it's your buddy and the contract goes for you without any oversight. And I'm telling you as a community advocate, I'm sick of it. I'm tired of seeing all these nonprofit organizations tokenizing our communities. That's disgusting. So when you have a perspective or you're working in the nonprofit world, you just see the money you let pass by your hands, but you're not working with the community members. I work with the people that are affected by this tokenizing of our communities.
Is there a particular nonprofit you think has, taken the money and run?
Yes,
or?
I know, and I'm not gonna say the names. Because when I get to the position where I have to, where I want to be.
No, you need to just call it out. Fear of retaliation and backlash from those organizations as it relates to communities of color. As a woman of color,
I'm not
yes.
afraid of retaliation. I'm disgusted by their practices, and obviously they're not endorsing me, and they know me because I'm very well known in the community, right? I am known. I know, of course. Let me give you just an example, please. Okay, Latino Network. So they have all these. They receive all these millions of dollars, right? Couple months ago, one of their members died. A young man, Valdivieso is his last name. He died. He was part of a program called CHI, C-H-I, right? So he died. What I know about the story, and I'm trying to reach out to the family, and they haven't got back to me because we need to know what happened there. This young man had a troubled life, right? He was one of the recipients of services of this program. Then he became, I believe, the coordinator of the program. And then happens that the boy committed suicide, I think. Why? Why, if he was working for this organization with oversight and mental health workers and counselors, what happened to this guy? After he died, I don't recall reading a statement from Carmen Rubio saying, I'm sorry, Latino Network lost this dear employee, I don't know. His name was in the website after a few weeks that this young man passed away. So I know he had a big funeral, and many employees of Latino Network were part of this funeral, and they took it just as a big party, I know because I am involved. So there's no oversight, and just like this organization, I can tell you many other ones that are tokenizing our communities. We have these organizations creating programs for just 6 months, 8 months, and then, oh, sorry, you're fired because we cannot longer pay your salary. We don't have enough funding for this program, and then you leave the people hanging in those programs. They're not receiving the help and the follow-up that they need to receive. That's what I'm against. That has to stop. And we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars that the county and the Department of Education is giving to these organizations. So what I want is an investigation of what happened, why this young man died. And then there's another one from the same program, another young man who was shot, and I don't know if he's still in the hospital. I can send you the information, but what's going on there? One is dead, one was shot. It doesn't matter if it didn't happen inside the building. They're part of their programs. So how can I be proud of having that endorsement when I know there's blood in these organizations and they have not been investigated? That's a problem.
Ms. Maxwell, is there an example of a nonprofit that the county has a contract with that you think demonstrates some lack of oversight on behalf of the county?
Well, I believe the fact that the business model of the county to create crisis mode as well as codependency among its partnerships that do not promote people getting off of social services and having a trajectory of upward mobility. The county is a public health agency, and its mission is to be a stopgap, not an everyday, yes, we're here to make sure that you get all of your bills paid. So
it's the general model that they
Yes.
operate, not a particular.
yes, they operate, they should be operating more from prevention and way less from intervention and crisis mode. They actually have a crisis and an intervention business model.
The Black Parent Initiative is one of them.
I wanna, if you could, I'm sure you have things to respond to within that,
Many.
but let's move on for a second
Well,
to.
can I
Good.
respond a little bit on this piece?
I think we'll get to something related with this
But I'm
question.
talking about this particular piece.
All right,
As
good.
as a good
All right,
example, if you will.
go ahead. I'll give you each a
Okay.
turn to respond, and then we'll move on.
I've been doing the Organ Voters Digest for quite some time and very sensitive about the Organ Voters Digest for quite some time. And very familiar with all of the issues. One of the major issues we had in District 2 was basically someone just really messing up the monies with Project Stay Clean.
Yes,
And a gentleman by the name of Roy J. Harris.
yes.
And it took me 2 years, if you will, but I got this one particular guy, and we did some investigative work, et cetera, et cetera. The county was putting a lot of money in that particular, in those coffers and aspect. of it.
Project Clean Slate is
Yes,
what we're talking about,
Clean
right?
Slate, exactly. And at the end of the day,
Yes.
he's out of business, okay? So I
Well, he
would
was
say,
investigated.
that's something that, as far as I'm concerned,
Money laundering.
I took the responsibility of getting that done. Like Sharon was saying, the reprisal thing is always there, big time. Now, the other thing I was going to say to you is that, as you know, Steve Marsh was the accountant for the county, and that was a political entity to a certain degree. They get
Yeah.
political.
Yes.
So now we're going to have a new auditor. We're going to have new auditors, and that's going to sort of take the politics out of this piece. I think Steve Learn, who happened to be, as you know, Oregonian reporter aspect of it. Yeah, he was an investigative kind of a guy. I think he's going to really dig in, and we're going to start looking at some good audits.
So you've endorsed him?
Was that?
Or you're voting for him, or you're?
Oh yeah, Learn, I am. Because, well, I said, March is not going to be there. So, but I can see a new group of auditors.
Yeah,
They're going to do a damn good job.
Okay, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. So the county does a lot of the work that it does in culturally specific communities through culturally specific nonprofits. And we're talking about SEI, we're talking about Latino Network, we're talking about MultCo, NEA. These are organizations that are led by, staffed by, and serve the communities that they come from. To suggest that they are all blanketly tokenizing their communities is irresponsible. There's no doubt that there's work
Excuse
that
me.
they
No,
could
it's
do
not
better.
your
I'm still
responsibility.
talking. I am still talking.
No.
There's no doubt.
Actually, she is still talking.
There is,
And so are you.
Wait,
She gets her
keep the
turn.
meat,
Thank
keep the
you.
meat, keep the meat.
there is
coming.
no doubt that there is work that they can do better, and I think that the county needs to build capacity in those organizations in many ways. There is no doubt that the county could do a better job of identifying what the outcomes are that it wants to reach, but to blanketly accuse them all of tokenizing their own communities is, as I said, responsible.
named
And I
it.
will
Wait,
point out,
She named
I
it.
will point out,
Right,
Ms.
yeah.
Garcia, that you
Go ahead.
asked for Carmen Rubio's endorsement.
She just
So
named
this is
them.
sounding a little bit like
Yes.
sour grapes.
Yes.
She
yes.
named them.
I've been
Okay.
looking. This is
No
the
one else
situation,
did.
and this is status quo. That's what I'm saying. And I didn't mention other organizations.
Let's
I
get it
know
straight.
Carmen, and
On record.
I was looking for the support of all Latino community. She never replied to me, right? And she knew.
Yes.
Well, that's fine. I'm not gonna force her, right? The situation that I'm telling you happens. I'm not making that up. So
Did she endorse
that,
Yes.
yes, and that's fine. You know, I'm not gonna argue because
More
of that.
status
But I
quo.
know that people that are, that are dying and they're receiving those services.
Right.
So the other organizations, I didn't mention them. You did. So that's status quo. How can you say that you're a candidate if you don't? And you're saying that accountability is important. Well, yes, it is. Call it out. This is what's happening. This is a problem. And when
So
you are in
so
the
you
community,
seem- so
I
you
know
seem-
that.
So you
Rachel,
seem
I
to.
have a question for Ms. Jayapal.
Thank you.
The blanket tokenization question aside, oversight of culturally specific nonprofits by Multnomah County has been spotty.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
and I,
Thank you.
And I think
the
you have a
question was
response
to me, right?
respond to that.
Yes, I would love
to that question,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
when we, like, our newspaper has looked closely at a number of these nonprofits, and
Yes.
frankly, the oversight of them has been abysmal.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I want you to respond to that. Like, if you're seeking our endorsement, how is it that
Or-
you think that this should change, or should it change at all?
And I would,
Yeah.
I want to broaden that a little actually, because like I think there's something to what Ms. Maxwell was saying in terms of like the systemic nature of it. Like, is there essentially the county lets out contracts to nonprofits who don't have the same requirements that the county did? Like, it would be more expensive to provide the services
Well,
if you were gonna bring those in house. So how do you balance
Yeah.
those two things of oversight with
Mm-hmm.
the question
And-
of how the model is set up at the county right
Yeah, I think those are great questions, and I see them as two questions related.
Okay.
There's oversight, and there's the question of how the county does its work and subcontracts its work. On oversight, as I said in my response, I absolutely agree that there needs to be better oversight. I think that's both about oversight once the contracts are awarded, and it's also about more clarity around what the outcomes are that the county wants. It's hard to have the oversight if you don't have clarity about the outcome. So I absolutely agree that those two things need to happen. I think auditor functions are incredibly important, and that the auditor absolutely has a role to play there. The question about what the county contracts out, I think that's an enormous question for government generally. If we are only contracting out for cheaper labor, I think we're going to run into problems. If, which I believe is the case, we're contracting out because we want to invest in those communities. Again, these are organizations that are led by and staffed by the communities that they serve. And awarding those contracts is a way of investing in those communities, which is what we need to do.
Agreed.
That's an important reason to be continuing to do this work. Another important reason is because we believe, and there isn't clear data out there, but at the county, the community believes that we can better deliver services to community if it's being delivered in a culturally specific, at a minimally culturally competent way. So, that's a separate reason from pure low cost. I do think that if the only reason, whether it's culturally specific services or firefighting services or prison services, if the only reason that a government entity is contracting out is for low cost, ultimately that's not going to work well.
Is there a service that you think the county should bring in-house, or a service that you think should be contracted out instead of what the county is doing? Is there a change you would make in the balance at this point?
I don't think I know enough about the specific pieces of the contracts to know. I know these organizations, but I don't know the contracts with them. So I don't think I know enough to be able to answer.
Well,
that.
I do.
Okay,
I
I
do.
think I want to move on from this subject matter.
Well, we got to move on to final
Yeah.
statements.
Yes,
We've actually reached that.
Can I?
So as an
I need to
oversight
please-
member
Give me,
from the
Hold on.
Sharon, let me
Hold
just
on,
tell you
you're-
something because I'm
No,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Carmen, I never asked Carmen Rubio for endorsement. I tried to reach out to her and she never replied to me. So obviously she got my message that I wanted to talk to her, but she assumed that I wanted endorsement, right? How do you know? I needed to know more about the organization. My daughter worked there. So since we're talking about nonprofit organizations, investigate Latino Network then. Okay, let's put it in the map, investigate them because I know people. My daughter worked for that organization. In 3 weeks, she said, Mom, I haven't done anything. I feel horrible because I received a paycheck for a job that I haven't, got any training and I don't know what to do. And she quit.
All right, so we have to move on to final statements now.
And Mr. Broussard, you've been a patient sort
Yeah.
in this interview, and I'd like
shows coming out of this.
and I'd like to have you offer the first of 4 statements on why it is that we should endorse you in this race.
Well, in all due respect, having been around for quite some time, and I have been involved in a number of things, I'm really concerned about the senior citizen issue aspect of it. That's a major piece. There's nobody representing anybody on the senior citizen issue, even now to date. And I'm concerned about the three commissioners that are sitting there right now. They're OJT, they just got there.
right?
And they don't have, in fact, as I look at the folks who are here, especially three of us at least, they don't even have that background. I mean, I've looked at their resumes. They don't have the background. That's why they're just sitting there. In all due respect, they're going to need some help. And you've got Deborah Kafori who's running, in all due respect. Fortunately, we're going to have an incumbent to a certain degree. That's going to be the only person that's going to be sitting there. And the other individuals don't know nothing. And we're going in some tough situations right now. So that's kind of like, I'll just kind of give it to you that way.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Ms. Garcia, the same question.
Why you should endorse me? Because for me, all community members are important. And what Bruce is saying about not having the experience of knowing what seniors need, I work with seniors in California, not here. My grandmother raised me, so I know what family is. I know how it looks like. What I've seen in the other candidates is that they haven't mentioned about the issues of immigrants. Sanctuary is important for our immigrants. It's going to affect the economy. It's happening right now. If we don't have the migrant workers coming to pick the fruits and vegetables, the price of food is going to increase. We have people with fear to go to school, to go to work. Immigration is a very serious issue. So I'm representing these immigrant communities, not just the Latino, immigrant communities at large. I'm connected with the community. I'm connected in different ways. I've been involved in social justice for the past 3 years. I advocate for incarcerated men. We have really good results. I'm a community advocate besides being a business owner. I'm heavily involved in my community. It's the first time I run for office, but this is a great opportunity to bring the awareness that we are existent. And when I'm telling you we've been tokenized, it's because we are. This is a serious problem. We have the issues of housing and homelessness. Guess what? We are affected too. Everybody's affected by these issues. But if we don't have the leaders that relate to the issues of our community members, it's harder to make, to create programs to give the right solution. We need to hold people accountable, even if they are our friends. I'm after accountability because we are paying the result of status quo. We are paying the result of favoritism. We are paying, the result we're experiencing damage in all our communities by these many nonprofits, all these politicians disconnected from the people, and we are tired of it. So I represent those voices. I'm upset. Yes, I am upset. Because I'm a fighter, I work with the people, I see what's going on in the community, and it's disappointing.
Thank you.
Sure. I decided to run. This was not part of a long-term game plan. I decided to run for office because I am feeling a sense of urgency about what I see happening in Multnomah County. And that is that we are in economic good times right now, and yet we are becoming essentially two communities. There's one community in which property values are rising, and we have coffee shops and orange bikes, and things are looking really good. There's another community which is struggling. I have watched that happen over my time here in Portland, and what I see is the community that's struggling is predominantly and disproportionately Black and brown immigrant and refugee. That is what compelled me to run. In order to address the issues that we see, we need to be able to move change, identify solutions, and move change through big systems. And I have experience doing that. I did it at Adidas. I've done it at All Hands Raised around education, at the Regional Arts and Culture Council. We also need to be able to bring together all of the sectors and the communities that are involved. And that means bringing together business. It means bringing together the nonprofit community in a collaborative way. It means bringing together each of the communities that comprise District 2 and other governmental bodies. It means advocating at the state legislature. It means advocating at city council, at TriMet, in order to create solutions and drive them through systems. And I have the experience and the drive to be able to do that. My endorsements reflect that. I'm really proud of them. I have been endorsed by every union that has endorsed in this race, including AFSCME Local 88. I'm particularly proud of that one because that is county employees. By Representative Tana Sanchez, who is one of our state representatives, by Representative Diego Hernandez, also one of our state representatives. as well as by a range of community leaders. And we need to hold people accountable. Ask anybody that I have worked with. I will hold people accountable, but I will do it in a productive way, in a way that leads us forward into solutions. That's why you should endorse me. Thank you.
I'm vested and I'm invested. I'm connected from the numbers to St. John's. I've been in the St. John's Parade. I've been in the Good in the Hood. I've been in the 82nd Rose Festival Parade. I'm connected to everyday working people, to people who are our neighbors and our friends, people who have children in our schools, people who are in the little leagues, in the extracurricular activities throughout District 2. As a business owner, that's what I'm known by. My unique proposition and qualifier, I am actually the 411 when it comes to connections and how to get people connected to services and resources that they need in the community. That's the type of background that I'm bringing day one, because I've already been doing it. As a woman in a non-traditional career, I've faced the giants. I've crashed the glass ceiling and it's broken. Therefore, I'm bringing such a depth and multifaceted as a change agent, already changing the minds of men and women, and acknowledging that our youth are our future, helping them to connect their education to their career future already. That the city and the county, the model that they use for the Summer Works program, that's my model. So this will not be a heavy lift, and I'm asking for your endorsement because I'm the right candidate at the right time that has the contacts and the network. That's why Senator Abel Gordley has endorsed me. That's why the union members of ASME that were at the last county board meeting for the diversity and inclusion, strategic plan was adopted, over 500 county employees that were there, as well as the public health department strategic plan. I sat on that advisory committee. All the communities of color were there. And so day one, when those ballots go out, it's Maxwell, Maxwell, Maxwell.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have one for those who haven't been here. We have one lighthearted question at the end. And that is, what's the most embarrassing thing that Facebook knows about you?
Ms. Jive, I'll have you answer first.
You saw me looking puzzled. Well, it's possible. It's not a thing that Facebook knows about me, but it's possible there's a photograph dating from my college days of me wearing, a pair of high-waisted terry cloth running shorts. And I think I would be quite embarrassed if that came along. Yeah.
Ms. Maxwell?
Mine's selfies. Hey.
I don't know. I cannot think of something that embarrassed me. I think I do what I do because I'm not embarrassed of it. Even if it's a picture, I might be like, I didn't like how I look there, but I cannot think of a specific thing. It's just the moment that it's been captured, I guess.
That's fair. Mr. Broussard?
Well, my grandkids were here this past summer, and we took some crazy pictures, some really crazy pictures. And wow, I said, hey, cool. We got a lot of hits for it. Isn't it something?
That's what it's all about.
That's right.
Great.
That's right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
Thank you very much to all four of you for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Really appreciate it.
All right, thank you so much. Had a blast. And I was just here for the comments.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice
Oh, I
to
was
meet
going to
you.
ask about your nose.
Yeah.
What's with your nose?
Oh, it was just for fun. Yeah. The last time Nigel gave me such a hard time, I thought that he was here.
Oh, fair enough.